International Women's Day continues to be a powerful platform globally that unifies tenacity and drives action for gender parity, while celebrating the social, cultural, and economic achievements of women. This year, the Parliament Channel highlights women in Trinidad and Tobago from all walks of life, including non-traditional sectors. We take a look at their journey, the challenges that were overcome, successes celebrated, and milestones achieved.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rajini Haraksing. I'm a human geneticist and lecturer in biotechnology here at UWI. This actually started a long time ago for me. In school, I was always very interested in studying phenomena at the most fundamental level. I liked maths and science. I liked other things too. And for a long time, I flip-flopped between what I wanted to do. Both of my parents are academics. My dad is a historian and my mom is a physicist. And I always knew I wanted to be an academic, but the field flip-flopped. So there was a time I thought I wanted to be a physicist because I wanted to study the universe at its most fundamental level. There was a time I thought I wanted to be a philosopher. In the end, I decided the thing that I was really interested in studying was life. And in order to study life at its most fundamental level, I think that's genetics and biochemistry. So that's how I decided to do that. My parents are probably my biggest influence. Education was always very important, but I was also encouraged to pursue lots of other extracurricular activities. I feel like I kind of grew up at UWI because I was here, on afternoons after school, and just sort of being in an academic community made me appreciate the intellectual freedom that comes with academia. Also, the idea that you're not going to work for a specific period of time. You're sort of working all the time or interested in thinking all the time. And it's really, I would say, more of a lifestyle than a job. I think my greatest success is probably yet to come, I hope. But I would say finding myself in positions where I've had the opportunity to work at the cutting edge with some of the, the leaders in my field. Science these days is less about one person sitting down or working alone in their own lab. Most big discoveries these days come from large consortia of scientists who collaborate and a community of people who are all working towards certain big goals. So and any individual scientist is not really themselves making huge leaps, but really it's a whole field of people who are moving together in one direction. I was lucky enough to be part of some major projects. One was the 1000 Genomes Project, which was an international consortium of hundreds of scientists who were working to map the genetic variation in thousands of people around the globe to understand how human genomes differ from each other, from people from different parts of the world. In the Caribbean and Latin America, actually some of the most recent numbers from the UN suggest that the Caribbean and Latin America have some of the highest rates of women in science in the world. And we see that here at UWI as well. In UWI, we actually have a 2-to-1 ratio of females to males students overall. And in the faculties of science and technology, we seem to have even numbers of males and females roughly. Particularly in the life sciences, we tend to have a lot of females and sometimes be female dominated. And in fact, in our biotechnology programs, we have largely a majority female population. However, in older generations, we do see that it is still male dominated, but we're seeing that change. And for example, I was hired here 3 years ago along with as a group of 5 people, and we were all 5 women, all hired into the Department of Life Sciences. And the interesting thing about that was that nobody seemed to notice that we were 5 women. It was just we're hiring these 5 people because we think they're the best for these jobs. And so I think that's really where we want to be, where we're not thinking so hard about we need to fill this quota of women. So in the Caribbean, I would say, at least in my generation, and I know this is not true of my mother's generation, women in science is not really a huge problem. I think we have quite a lot of girls who are interested and women who are coming into science. I think the problem is getting these people to stay and to go to the highest levels of achievement in their fields. There's lots of issues as to why people leave. It can be just that certain types of careers are more difficult to manage with family life. I'm not sure exactly why. I don't intend to leave. But I do know we're seeing more and more girls coming into science, and I think that's a good thing. I went to SAGS, and at SAGS I was obviously among a community of women and alumni who have been high achieving people for decades. And I never once felt that as a woman I should not be able to achieve anything. I don't know if that's true for girls across the country. In terms of the students that I see who come through UE, I believe the ones that I teach also generally feel like they can accomplish anything they want to. I try to instill a sense of empowerment to these girls when in my teaching and in my research, and to kind of lead by example. But I can't really speak in general. But as far as I've seen, lots of women and girls are coming into science and enjoying themselves and wanting to, and having the ambition to become scientists. And I think that's as much as we can hope for as teachers. Women have been prominent in the field of genetics for a long time, starting with discovering the structure of DNA. So this was discovered by 3 people, and one of whom was a woman. Another important scientist who is living today is also a woman, Mary Claire King. She's the discoverer of the BRCA gene, which is a gene that's responsible for a number of breast cancers when it's mutated. And the discoverers of genome editing, of a particular genome editing technology, which just happened a few years ago, are both women. So women have been quite prominent in the field of genetics and genomics. And for me, working in this field, I've never felt any kind of discrimination or any kind of feeling like I was alone in this as a woman. I would give the same advice to boys and girls, in that you can do anything you want to do, but you have to make sure that you are putting in the work, and that you are putting in the work and the time. So you have to master all the fundamentals. There's no replacement for hard work. No matter how brilliant you are, you have to do the work.
Women have come a long way, yet there's still more to be achieved. For more information on International Women's Day 2019, visit our website at ttparliament.org and our social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram.
So my grandmother died of colon cancer when I was 13 years old. And during that period, I remember witnessing my mom being very confused about how to get my grandmother through this period and what are the best ways to take her through this time so that she would survive. And that experience has taught me how difficult it is. It's a very, very difficult word to hear, but it doesn't need to be. You just need the right support system and the right assurance.
The word cancer is a horrible thing to be told that you have. And this is what the patient navigator should try to help that person realize what is the next question you should ask, and what is it do we have the resources to take it along?
So the Caribbean Cancer Research Initiative, or CCRI, is a nonprofit organization that was co-founded by me and one of my colleagues with an aim to improve patient outcomes, cancer patient outcomes in the Caribbean, and to prevent more cancers. But the avenue that we're using to do this is entirely through research. So we are trying to set up research-based or data-driven initiatives and projects, of which our patient navigation project is one of them.
Kimberly approached me telling me about this project and saying, you know, really what the local situation is that cancer is one of the biggest problems that we have in Trinidad. And the system for supporting cancer diagnosis and cancer treatments is really sort of unknown. And we don't really have any sort of analysis of what is going on a local level in terms of how we approach this, this problem.
So this project is important because it is an innovation that will save patients' lives. It will improve cancer patient outcomes in the Caribbean. It will remove all of the barriers that a person will experience once they are diagnosed with cancer so that they can have the best possible outcomes.
Patients, when they find out that they're diagnosed with cancer, often have no idea how to navigate the medical system, the scientific literature, the genetic testing. They have no idea what the process is. And so what they really need is someone to sort of help hold their hand and walk them through that process, let them know what their options are and what are the next steps now that you have this diagnosis, or now that someone in your family has this diagnosis.
Once a patient gets diagnosed, the plan is for the patient navigator to pick up these patients automatically once there's a diagnosis of cancer. There's a lot of things that need to be done, and there's a great need for a patient navigator. There are a lot of patients, there are a lot of people out there that need help. Money is the last thing that I trust that could get anybody through cancer.
So it really is going to help, we think, to have someone both in person and online helping you navigate the entire medical system and all of the information that you need to get, all the processes that need to be done, and what you as a patient need to do to really drive your treatment forward.
So the second part of our project is what we call a virtual or web-based patient navigation program. So for those people who do not have access to a personal patient navigator, this is a tool that will be able to allow you to basically understand what you're about to go through in the simplest format. And the reason why I thought this was useful is because when you get diagnosed, if you go online to try and figure out what does this mean, what do I do next, a lot of the information is very heavy. It's a lot of text to sift through, and a lot of times you don't understand. So we thought of a method in order to take all of that information and make it into something a little bit more seamless and simple.
I mean, cancer research is a huge thing in, you know, North America and Europe. There's a lot of money that goes into this, and a lot of amazing discoveries in terms of diagnosing and treating cancer have come out of that. But we, for some reason in the Caribbean, have not invested in cancer research. Kimberly has decided that she has this one mission: to understand the cancer situation in Trinidad and Tobago. And that was the context in which I met her. But deciding to work with someone, especially a long-term relationship like an advisor, PhD student one, means that you have to really like each other. And you have to be able to stand this person for many years to come, right? I really like Kimberly. I think she has a great energy, and her passion for her work comes through on a daily basis. She's an extremely hard worker. She's very smart. She knows what she's about, and I mean, those are all qualities that I like and I respect. She's been able to rally now maybe 20-something volunteers from all sorts of different areas. And she just really holds the whole thing together. I mean, she's there, she's in it. She's really committed to this.
What I want to know is, why haven't we evolved to have X-Men powers yet?
So to answer this question, there are 2 points that you need to understand. One is that as far as we understand, a single mutation cannot all of a sudden bestow spectacular physiological differences on that individual. And the second is that there are already people walking around us who have superhuman abilities. Species acquire new traits through the process of evolution. What underlies evolution is genetic diversity, or mutations. Most mutations manifest themselves in small physiological changes that over time create great diversity amongst the species, and not as the sudden acquisition of brand new traits. There are already some examples of individuals who have superhuman powers. For example, mutations in a particular gene lead to reduced body fat and increased skeletal muscle, so these individuals actually have super strength. Mutations in another gene allow those individuals to carry twice as much oxygen in their blood, and that allows them to have super endurance. Finally, mutations that lead to a rare genetic condition called Marfan syndrome affect connective tissue, and those individuals can actually bend into all sorts of weird shapes that the rest of us can't do. So, can we mutate to become like the X-Men? Well, perhaps, but it'll take millions and millions of years if we leave it up to natural processes, and we'd also have to be really, really lucky. But on the other hand, there are already some individuals walking around who do have really interesting superpowers.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Man has charted the stars, leapt into the cosmic unknown that cradles our Earth. Centuries of questioning propelled mankind towards deep exploration. We have seen its skies, touched its heavens. But our gaze has shifted, and now we look to another world, beyond the known and into a desolate desert of night. Or perhaps not so desolate as we once thought. The deep sea is the last great unknown wilderness left. This is the first cradle of civilization, from single-celled organisms to complex beings. On a grander scale, collectively the oceans have fostered life for over 4 billion years. 71% of the Earth is inhabited by the oceans, and yet only 5% has been thoroughly explored. Oceans help shape planet Earth, everything from controlling climate regulation, creating a sustainable food source, contributing to nutrient recycling, and providing us with more than half the oxygen we breathe. To this day, we are still heavily reliant on its offerings. In this series, we will focus on a small section of the map and hone in on the rich Caribbean territory. Exploration of this particular deep began a century ago, led by European scientists in the early 1800s. It remained undisturbed till now.
We are very excited because we will be collaborating from now on with a lot of global scientists, many of whom are interested in our sensitive environments, which have been discovered off the east coast of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as off of Kikamjeni and other areas in the Caribbean. The EV Nautilus is a ship that is very well equipped. It's got high-tech equipment to map the seafloor. I personally pushed for an invitation for them to come to Trinidad and Tobago. This in order to sustain the ecosystem, resources, all those valuable components which we derive from the deep sea environment.
The EV Nautilus was built by the Ocean Exploration Trust, which was founded in 2008 by Dr. Robert Ballard, best known for his discovery of RMS Titanic's final resting place. He's also one of National Geographic's explorers in residence.
The Caribbean is very special to us for many reasons. That's where our ship is registered. The EV Nautilus is registered in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, so, which I've been to. I've been to a lot of the islands in the Caribbean. Plus, I've been studying it for a long time. My first time in the Caribbean was actually in my first cruise as a chief scientist, and that was off of Cayman Islands and Jamaica. So that was special. I will always go back whenever I can.
In 2013, during its windward passage, the ship focused its attention on the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea Connect. While the 2014 season included dives focusing on the famous Kikim-Jenny submarine volcano off the coast of Grenada, the journey then concluded off the east coast of Trinidad and Tobago, studying the mud volcanoes deep within the surface. Here, where life is sculpted by extreme and hostile conditions, the core of our Earth formed through submarine volcanoes.
So there's always fun when you go to where no one has gone before and you find something you didn't know was there. And that's when it's really exciting.
A lot of our Caribbean nationals aren't even aware about the importance of the deep sea environment. In the Caribbean environment, we found lots of marine communities existing, and that means, therefore, we have been able to record greater biodiversity for Trinidad and Tobago. This means that we are adding to the scientific information, and this is why we felt this project was a good idea to engage the younger generation, to engage all who are interested in this area, and to educate our population.
It was only the second time in our history that such an in-depth exploration took place off our shores. What it revealed was a vast abundance of exotic forms living off chemicals being released from the seafloor.
When the Nautilus first arrived in Grenada, I was absolutely amazed because Dr. Robert Ballard was one of my heroes, and suddenly here he is in a little island in the Caribbean. And we all know about Kikim-Jenny and we can't travel our boats through that area, but to actually see it underwater, and watch all the creatures, and they actually found creatures that they hadn't found anywhere else. So, this was an amazing thing for me, and guess what? It's in our backyard.
We must be aware that we need to conserve, we need to regulate what is taking place in our deep sea environment. This in order to maintain or to sustain the populations, the ecosystem, resources, all those valuable components which we derive from the deep sea environment.
The Caribbean, this diverse colony of coral atolls, provides a new destination for true explorers, an area beyond prior jurisdiction. Aided by the technology of the Nautilus, we now have the capabilities to finally explore the secrets of the deep.
The deep sea is tied into the food web of the ocean in so many different ways, and in ways that we're just starting to understand. So to see human activity taking place in the deep ocean before we even understand what's happening down there is frightening. It's something that we need to understand all of these connections so that we can understand if you affect one thing, it's going to have an impact throughout the ecosystem, all the way to the surface and in human communities.
In this 5-part series, we'll explore the deep sea environment and illuminate the depths while revealing the resilience of marine life. We'll journey to the ecosystems off Trinidad and Tobago's east coast, as well as to the renowned Kikim-Jenny undersea volcano in Grenada. And we'll showcase the many careers in deep sea exploration. It's time to marvel at the deep sea wonders of the Caribbean.
Our expeditions into the Caribbean, particularly in the area where we were, is really just the beginning. There's more unexplored than explored. Think of the Earth as a living creature. And that's what we're studying. We're studying a thing we live on that's actually alive. And your job is to figure out how to live in harmony with it.
Life blooms in the darkest of places, in the deepest parts of the earth, the ocean wild. Jules Verne once wrote, "Who can fathom the depths of the abyss apart from Captain Nemo and I?" Now with modern technology, we can. Time to dive and discover the ocean galaxies resting just below the thunder of the upper deep.